Hello, how are you doing,
All
sir?
right, how are you?
I am doing pretty good. Today, it's gonna be a little unconventional. I am working on a research project for nationwide for my school, and I wanted to interview somebody from my actual neighborhood that does some of this work. I'll tell you more about my essay. For my essay that I have to write, it's basically a community analysis thing. And pretty much I'm finding a community or group that has to deal with a certain issue in that group. And I had to do all the primary research interviews. I had to do like a secondary research. But I'll be setting up an interview with you, which is what we're doing today. Conducting an interview with my community, and we're just going to talk about an issue, misconception, etc., that you're most interested in documenting. So I'm going to talk about housing for the youth. And since I know you are wanting to do a whole lot of that, I'm like wanting to ask you some questions. I have seven questions that I'm going to ask you about what you do. So my first question is, what do you do?
I ask myself that every day, Daniel. I'm with Nationwide Children's Hospital, and my official title is Vice President for Community Wellness. And that really means that we look at issues that we know impact kids and families' health outcomes, but aren't going to get addressed within the hospital walls. And so one of those areas that we do that is through an initiative called Healthy Neighborhoods, Healthy Families.
Okay.
And that initiative looks at 5 areas that we think is important for kids in particular, but families overall, health outcomes. So that's housing, economic development, education, wellness, and community enrichment. And so we invest in all 5 of those areas, whether we run our own programs, work with community partners out there, work with residents and support their efforts. I really am responsible for leading that body of work for the hospital.
Okay. Alrighty then, that's good. I definitely like how you definitely introduced that community aspect of bringing the youth together. My second question is, how, in your words, do you think the Linden community needs to improve, and what areas should the community improve in through the youth housing aspect?
I think Linden needs to continue to listen to its residents, its longtime residents, as much as we can, because you know what's best for your community and what's needed in your community. At the end of the day, you're the ones who are going to drive the long-term change and whatever you want to see in that. But what we have heard from the community, as outlined in the One Linden Plan, is that issues like housing, like access to good jobs, like quality education, having a safe, neighborhood. Those are all things that are critical for the Linden community. In particular, with housing, all those other things that I mentioned are hard to achieve.
Yeah.
If you don't have a safe, quality, affordable place to live. And young people need that, and we need to support them and their parents and families to be able to have access to that.
Okay. One of my other questions, this will be a probably a longer one. Do you know the stats in terms of all the youth housing and what's going on in that community?
Well, we certainly in Linden, and like most communities that are downtown adjacent, urban, however you want to define it, have issues around affordability first and foremost, and affordability at an income threshold that is affordable for folks living up to 80% of what we call area median income. Area median income for the area is probably around $50,000, so 80% up to that is where we then want to spend, or where we then want to create affordable options. There's something called housing cost burden. That means that you should not spend more than 30% of your household income on housing related costs. So your mortgage, your rent, those type of things. Unfortunately, we see a high percentage of families in Linden who spend more than 50% of their household income on housing related costs. So you can imagine that takes away from other things like access to food, paying your utilities on time. As I know my utility bill continues to go up. Paying for a tripod for a camera. Yeah. All of that eats away at that. And with things becoming more and more expensive in our community, in our country, it doesn't get any easier. So that's another aspect of it. I think the third is that most of the homes in Linden are made up of renters. So more than 50% of the housing stock is rental. And so that creates issues from a variety of perspectives, but one is that there's not enough home ownership opportunities for families, especially African American families. And that is the number one and still the best way for families to build wealth. And so we need to continue to figure out ways to create those home ownership opportunities, especially for first-time homeowners, like you in the future, right?
That's one of the questions I'm going to ask.
So that's just some of it. We're continuing to face an affordability crisis in our community at large. So we have about a 55,000 unit shortage of affordable housing in Columbus at large. We also will likely finish this year with more than 25,000 eviction filings. That's more than New York City sees. And they have 8 times the population that we do. So real crisis, real issue, and one that we collectively need to figure out.
Wow. I have out of my own questions, question for you. Me as a youth, getting ready to move into my own apartment, who would I need to talk to in order to get something like that started?
Yeah, there's groups like Nationwide Children's who does a housing effort through our Healthy Neighborhoods, Healthy Families initiative. Now those are usually single family homes that we then rent out, but our rent for a single family home is pretty much as much, if not less, than what it would rent for an apartment. So you get a lot more space, your own space. You're not sharing walls with people, and you're paying, if not the same, if you're not paying the same, you're paying less than you would for an apartment. But I would really, recommend talking with, more of the housing experts that are out there that develop some of this affordable housing. So there's a variety of groups out there. Like I said, Nationwide Children's has one, but certainly look at that. And remember, when you are looking for housing, that you want to look for housing that's not going to make you housing cost burden, which means that whatever income you have, you should not be paying a rent that's more than 30% of your income. So you always got to keep that in mind, and also look at the track record of the landlord. Is this a landlord that's based in Columbus?
Sure.
Or are they some out of town that owns 1,000 properties in Columbus, but they live in Los Angeles? You probably don't want that. So do your background, on that. But certainly remember about your finances and what you can afford.
Definitely right now on my notes to contact you guys. I might be one of the first people to do that because
we had a young person that I was connected with that goes to Ohio State that moved into one of our homes. So yeah, so we have folks your age who do and you find a roommate if you can,
For sure,
to
yeah.
share some of that.
Okay.
Yeah, or multiple.
I will definitely take an account for that.
Yeah.
Just like three more questions. Since you're also a part of the Linden advisory board, what can we as a community do to improve the Linden area?
Well, at the end of the day, the real work and change is going to be led by you and by fellow young people, but just by folks who live in the community. And so you need to continue to advocate for what is most important from your lens.
Okay.
What I think is important, what someone else might think is important, may not be the top priority. So we can't focus on this thing that we think is important when you're telling me right now, hey, the thing that's most important to me right now is having access to behavioral health services. That's what's really gonna help me right now, or my community right now in particular. And so it's continuing to advocate for your community and being sure that the folks that come into your space that say they want to invest in Linden are including you at that table. And that's particularly why we have the Linden Advisory Committee, because any investments that we make at the hospital, we want to be driven by the community. And that's why we ask for feedback from folks like you and your mom, at that. And if they tell us that we need to pivot from some of our investments, then we do that. So we had an advisory member who has to have handicap accessible housing, and she asked why we didn't have any what they call ADA compliant housing. She said that in one of our first Linden Advisory Council meetings, you know what we have now? ADA compliant housing, because she advocated for that. And so, when you're in those spaces, when you're in those rooms, when you're with folks that are decision makers like we had at that time, you certainly have to do that, and hold us accountable, for that. But that would be, my number one suggestion.
All right. Just two more. How are we able to provide for teens my age in the Linden community if they're homeless?
It's a great question. Unfortunately, the homelessness issue is getting worse. And that affordability issue that I talked about for housing impacts people at a variety of income levels. And so that's why that issue is growing. So there are great organizations out there that do offer services and supports. One of those is called the Star House. That is really a drop-in type of system and shelter for young people specifically. They have a facility kind of in the Milo Grogan area right now. They're going to open up a facility on the south side as well, but a really great program and service. The other is Huckleberry House,
I've heard.
they have some great programs and resources and housing options for kids who are either homeless or in transition when it comes to housing. I think though also, like, we need to continue to provide access and opportunity for young people for career opportunities, even alternatives to exploring the traditional college route. So how we get them engaged in certification programs and trades and other type of efforts so that they can earn a decent living and be able to provide for whatever their hopes, dreams, and aspirations are. So making sure that our community is coming together to create that access and opportunity for kids that normally wouldn't get that access, that maybe don't have those political connections at that company, but have just as much ability and aptitude as any other kid. And if we're not creating those spaces for them, then we're unfortunately creating a situation where we're leaving them out from realizing all the great things that actually are happening in Columbus. So certainly need to advocate for companies to create that access.
Okay. That's a good question. I've learned definitely a lot about that, and
Yeah.
I'll definitely be contacting Nationwide for sure when I get to that area. My last question is just kind of a fun one. Can you personally tell me what's been your greatest success serving as part of the advisory board?
Probably this right now. And I'm serious. I say that because I've always worked in the nonprofit sector since I graduated from college. I have a business degree and a law degree. Never practiced as an attorney or anything like that because I love the work that I do. But most specifically has been the work with young people. And as a father now, the greatest joy that I have is with my son. So being able to engage with young people like yourself. Who are emerging leaders and ones that just have so much personality is fun. We have a lot of programs at the hospital, but my favorite always is our Upward Bound Math and Science program because it's for young people in high school will be the first in their family to go to college. And we do a wraparound type of program for them. And I just love seeing our young people over the summer, working at jobs or participating in our simulation lab. So being able to connect through this advisory board on something like this, is kind of validation that, we're doing the right thing, that you see value in the council and that obviously then, we've had some type of connection where you feel comfortable enough to reach out to me to ask for support on a school project. So that's it. I'll say though the second thing, it seems like it's related to your family, is getting folks connected to opportunities at the hospital. We have so much talent in our community, and your mom let me know how talented your dad is, and that we were able to get connected and benefit from his talents for a job at the hospital. If we wouldn't have had that relationship, maybe I wouldn't have got connected to you guys, and the hospital wouldn't have benefited from your dad's talent. So that is worthwhile, and certainly why we do the work and why we want to hire the best people out there. As you can see, Lyndon is very talented. In your household alone, let alone the community at large. So those experiences, I think, mean everything for why we do the work.
Thank you so much for definitely answering me.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. I definitely appreciate all the info that I got. I'll definitely let you know how this goes for my project. And if I have the opportunity to, I might even get a chance to show this to the Lyndon Advisory Board meeting and be able to show with the community of all the stuff that I've been able to do. I'm blessed to being able to have contacts that I can contact.
Absolutely.
My mom taught me always it's good to have contacts with people because you never know.
You never know.
What could be the outcome of that, whatever event that you need.
That's right.
If you need a job, you need a house, car, help paying bills, you have contacts with those people you can ask for.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad I got to interview
Absolutely.
you.
Same here, man. And we have a meeting in December, so.
December, well, I'm definitely going to have to show that because
All right.
that might be my final project.
All right.
All right.
Let them know. All right. Well,
Thank
good luck.
you so much.
No, thank you.